Oh, I'm so excited about tonight. I can hardly stand it. Today has been excruciatingly long because I have just been very, very excited for tonight. I'm not gonna lie to you. The message tonight and I have been in a bit of a fight over the past weekend. Friday, I was pretty aggravated with what I had in my document for tonight. And then Saturday, didn't really get any better. And then midnight, Sunday night, a couple days ago, the Lord kind of dropped it in my lap, and I felt like for the first time I had handles on where we are headed tonight. Before I go any further, though, to kind of set up where we are, if you weren't here last week, we're in a series called Hope Has a Name, a conversation specifically about mental health. We had an extensive series on this last spring because we believe that if we polled everybody in the room tonight or watching online with us tonight, there would be a lot of people that would say, I struggle with anxiety, I struggle with depression, I struggle with suicide ideation, I struggle with wanting to hurt myself, I struggle with trauma or an eating disorder or anything else kind of underneath the umbrella of mental health. And we take this very, very seriously because we believe that the church should be and always should be the safest place to have every conversation possible on planet Earth. We believe that to our core. So we're gonna continue to tackle some complicated topics that have very, very nuanced answers. So I hope that every word you hear me say tonight is from someone who loves you, from someone who cares for you, and someone who does not just want to preach at you, someone who wants to do life with you. I want to be your friend. I want to be your family. But I also want to tell you the truth because I do believe that there is so much in this topic for us to begin to pull apart, to unpack, and to understand. I also know that there are a lot of you that would say, Carson, I feel like tonight is gonna be a bit of a challenge for me because I don't feel like I struggle with anything that you just shared. I don't feel like I struggle with mental health. I feel confident. I've had a really, really good childhood. I don't feel like I have any baggage that's following me around in my life. Whatever the case may be, I want to put three things in front of you before we go any further tonight. And if they feel a little bit convicting, that's okay. We can talk about it after. I mean that. If you feel like I'm up in your space a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, part of that was the plan. But I want you to hear these three things in love. And the first one is this, is always add value. If you feel confident, if you don't know how to be a part of the conversation around mental health, one thing you can start doing today is to choose to always add value to everybody, always, no matter what. Add value to people. And a place that you can do this and a way that you can start is to stop swiping on Instagram and start commenting. I mean it. I'm not joking around. People, just like you and me, I am one of them, put things on Instagram and wonder, does anybody care? Does anybody see me? You could be that person that says, I see you. I care about what's going on in your life. I want to add value to you. Don't just be a consumer on Instagram, be a contributor. Add value to people always. 2, live by the 10-foot rule. This is something I'm trying my best to adopt in my life. This is a bit of a challenge, especially if you are an introvert. This means never walk by somebody within 10 feet without speaking to them. They are wondering in some form of who they are, if they matter. And you never know what's going on inside of someone else's heart and mind. I don't care if you don't know them or not. You can say, hey, how are you? How's your day been? What's going on? What are you doing tonight? You don't have to be creepy. And please, 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 don't be creepy. Just say, hey, abide by the 10-foot rule. And third, go a mile, not an inch. I did this with my community group on Thursday, and Marlon, you here? Yeah, let's go. Marlon looked at me like, what are we doing? Because we split up and I said, you've got to find somebody that you don't know and you've got to go a mile deep with them in 5 minutes. And somebody asked, what does a mile mean? And I meant, what are you afraid of? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? Are you anxious or worried about anything? What's your biggest fear in life? What was childhood like growing up? Where do you want to work? Anything like that works. Choose to go a mile. Don't stay an inch. We are so bad at this. When somebody says, hey, Carson, how are you? I say, good, but busy. That is so shallow, right? And that's saying, I actually don't care that you asked. Now, I'm not suggesting that you have to share your entire life story or set of struggles with everybody that you meet, but just choose. I'm gonna go a mile, not an inch, because I have something to contribute. I have something to give away. And I want everybody that I meet to know that they matter. So if you feel confident in your mental health, if you feel stable in your life right now, this is your homework. Apply. I would just challenge you, just apply one of them to your life, and I believe that our world will be a better place and look a little bit more like God's kingdom. The title of the message tonight is Finding Hope in the Dark and the Bravery to Fight. I'm sorry for you note takers. I know it's a bit of a long title, and that messes up your whole template deal. You'll be okay. Finding Hope in the Dark and the Bravery to Fight. I really want you to leave here tonight feeling like you got a shot of adrenaline in your spirit and in your soul to take hold of what is true. Not to just know what is true, because there's a difference between knowing what is true and taking hold of what is true. Taking hold of what is true says, I'm living as if what I know is actually the truth. And I want you to be able to do that tonight and in the days to come. Maddie and I, my wife and I, got COVID last January. And we were on quarantine when everybody went to Passion. Shout out Passion Conference. They're coming in a couple weeks to Overflow. Okay, so 4 of you are gonna be here. Cool. Yeah. Who wants to go to conference this year? Okay, stay tuned for that. We've got more information coming about that in the next couple weeks. But we got COVID 2 days before everybody left to go to Passion. It was actually my first event as the Overflow director, so I missed Passion because I was stuck at home on quarantine. It was actually kind of beautiful, though, because Maddie and I, that's when we put together Lennon's crib. We were watching Passion on live stream on the floor in Lennon's room, putting together her crib. But we watched 2 things while we were on quarantine. Maddie got really obsessed. Sorry, I just threw her under the bus. Maddie got really obsessed with The Wheel of Fortune. We watched every episode that is on Netflix, Hulu, and YouTube. Yes, they're all different. We watched every single one of them, and Maddie always got the puzzle right, and I was still confused as to vowels by the time that we got to the end of it. But we also watched a movie called We Bought a Zoo. Have we seen that? Holy cow, I cried and cried and cried at like every turn of the movie. And I have never wanted to have a zoo, but I wouldn't mind a zoo now. Like, if that's what my life would be like I would be a zookeeper. That'd be pretty cool to have some giraffes and lions and bears and tigers. The point of the story is there is a very, very sentimental part that kind of gets pulled all throughout the movie, and it's labeled as 20 seconds of insane courage. And it's the lead guy in the movie is telling the story of how he met his wife, the kid's mom there in the movie, and it came from him deciding to have 20 seconds of insane courage. The thing that I would love to invite you to is to do that in your own life. 20 seconds of insane courage to answer this question is, what is the easiest thing to believe about yourself? 20 seconds in your mind, in your heart right now. What is the easiest thing to believe about who you are, what you're like, what your future looks like, what your condition is? What's the thing that comes right to your mind? If I had to imagine, something came to your mind that might not have been super helpful or super positive. And I believe in leading the way in questions like this. So I'm gonna tell you a couple of the answers that I would say to the question. An answer that I would say is that I'm not the guy. I'm not the guy for my job. Maybe I'm not the best dad. Maybe I'm not the best husband. Maybe it would be that I'm gonna feel the rhythms of depression or anxiety or panic attacks that I have felt along the way in my life forever. Maybe it would be that I'm fundamentally flawed and I'm not worth anything. These are all real things that I would put as the answer to this question. And that's really, really important because that opens up a window into what the reality of my life really is. And I think if you're anything like me, we would much rather not answer this question because the minute that we answer it, we feel like we've got to deal with the implications of it. And that's why mental health is so personal. It is not an equation. It is not a one-size-fits-all formula. It's personal. It's personal to me because I have experienced struggles in this area. I'll be really honest with you. The 3 to 4 weeks after Lennon was born in June, I was a wreck. I didn't feel like I could go anywhere. I didn't feel like I could do anything. I had panic attack after panic attack. I did not know what was going on. I had never felt those feelings before. Me and my counselor became extremely close throughout that time. Mental health is personal. And if you hear me say anything else tonight, please hear this. I am not suggesting that you just need to believe more, worry less, have deeper faith. I am not slapping that answer on your experience. In fact, the thing that I would say to you is keep going in whatever direction you're going, especially if you're getting help. If you're on medication, if you're seeing someone, if you are diving into intentional conversations, keep going. Don't stop, but stay close to Jesus. Stay close to your people. It matters immensely because this is incredibly personal. The bedrock to any conversation on mental health is this, is that you have intrinsic value. Intrinsic meaning to belong naturally. You have intrinsic value to God. Matthew chapter 6, part of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about worry, and he paints this really, really clear picture for everyone who is listening. He's talking about the birds, and he asks them to consider the birds and how they exist and how all of creation functions and how it revolves around the sun, essentially. And he says, how much more does your Father in heaven care for you than he cares for the sparrows of the air? He's talking about how we are truly inherently valuable to our Father in heaven, to our good and beautiful and all-powerful and all-loving Father in heaven. And the thing that I think we've all got to understand is that when it comes to mental health, there are so many different ideas. Last night, I got sucked into this black hole of reading people that believe that mental health is a myth and all these different things, and they are certainly entitled to their opinion. But it feeds the narrative that God doesn't care because you should just be able to flip a switch and all of a sudden be okay. And there is no evidence anywhere in the Bible for that. There is no evidence in the life of Jesus for that. And I would love to talk with you a little bit more about that. But something that we all should know is this, is that a lie that sustains 1 billion mental health struggles is that God is indifferent. And that is a lie. God is not, has never been, and never will be indifferent to your struggle, to your pain, to your trauma, to your experience. But something that's true is this: if evil is real, then we are at war. If evil is real in the world, and I'm not asking you for you to believe in this kind of fictional looking character of the devil with 2 little horns running around breathing on everybody. I'm not asking you to go there with me for a second. But if you turn on your TV or if you log into your phone, we could probably, whether you follow Jesus or not, agree that there is evil in the world. There are things gone bad in the world. And if that is true, if that is our reality, then we are simply at war. And I think 2 things that make this incredibly complicated for you and for me are insecurity and isolation. And I can't help but continue to talk about these things because I think in college, we are all insecure to some degree, and we all feel isolated to some degree, yet we are around probably more people than we have ever been in our entire life. So I have two things that I want you to know about insecurity and isolation. Insecurity stunts growth and generates untrue conclusions. You just write that down and process it again a little bit later on. Insecurity, it stunts your growth as a human being. It stunts your growth as a Jesus follower. It generates untrue conclusions nearly every time. And then isolation, it destroys your confidence and shrinks your perspective down to the size of like a pinhole into your life. And this is critically important for us to know, especially in the conversation around mental health, because if you're feeling insecure about your struggle, the thing that you can probably know is that that's challenging your growth and that your conclusions are probably untrue because you're insecure about your struggle. That isn't rooted in truth or in fact or in what God says about you. And then if you're isolated in your struggle and you don't feel confidence and you don't feel like you understand what is happening in your life, humbly, that makes sense. Because insecurity and isolation are not good for you. They never will be. Now, I'm not saying that solitude is not helpful. I'm not saying that quiet and stillness is not helpful. I'm saying relational isolation is not helpful when it comes to you processing your mental health. Three things kind of that correlate underneath those two ideas that I think we've all got to get on the same page of, especially in the context of the church, is this. As one, is getting help is a sign of weakness. That is a lie. That has never been true. In fact, I would go on to say it this way. Getting help is a sign of wisdom. Seeking counsel, recruiting help for the most complicated part of your brain makes perfect sense to me. It is not a sign of weakness. A great faith leads to less adversity. That is a lie. If a church or a pastor like me standing on a stage with a microphone has told you the more you believe, the better your life will become because the adversity will begin to dissipate and the hard things will just go away because you've got a bigger and deeper and better version of faith. That's a lie. When you look at the story of Scripture, the people with the deepest faith had a really, really challenging time, but God never left them a single moment along the way. The greater your faith becomes, potentially, the more adversity you will experience. But that doesn't mean that you're moving in the wrong direction. The third thing, they don't, so I shouldn't. They don't need counseling, so I shouldn't need counseling. They don't need medication, so I shouldn't need medication. They don't need help. They don't journal. They don't this. They don't that. We use this as the means to make decisions all the time. I know I do. Like, they don't exercise, so neither should I have to exercise, right? Like, I wish that were true. I have to exercise. I know I don't look like I do, but I have to for my mental state, my mental stability, my mental confidence, my mental clarity. Because comparison is never helpful in a conversation like this. My good friend Bob Goff says it this way: God never compares what he creates. Now, another way that he would say it, I love, is that God has never looked at you and wished that you were someone else. And I would just encourage you to think on that, to process that, to think about where you have tried to be other people along the way or try to fit a specific mold along the way, because comparison is robbing you from the life that God has intended you to live, if so. During the Take Heart series, we said something I believe that has rung true in my life. Actually, I had someone quote it back to me this summer. He said, didn't you say this in the Take Heart series? And he was challenging me to follow my own words. And I was like, ouch. And this is what it was, is what goes unnamed goes unhealed, is the way that we said it. But this is kind of specifically in conversation to vulnerability. And vulnerability has become quite the buzzword around conversations about mental health. Brene Brown was a pioneer of talking about vulnerability in a new and a very, very refreshing way. Vulnerability is so critically important, but there's something else to it that we've all got to begin to wrestle with, and it's this, is what goes unprocessed also goes unhealed. Because if you're anything like me, I'm like, okay, I work up to be vulnerable. I work up to say the thing, and I say it, and I begin to expect immediate results. Okay, I got it off my chest. Now it's out there. God can deal with it, and now I can move on. No, there's still work to be done. And what goes unprocessed will remain unhealed, which is why I hope that tonight that you leave feeling energized to process what is actually happening beneath the surface of your life. The battle for your mind starts with bravery and is won by resiliency and surrender. And if you're beginning to ask, I don't understand how bravery, resiliency, and surrender all fit into the same statement, welcome to the backwards economy of God. And we're going to explore that economy a little bit as we go along. But the other thing that I would just say about bravery really quick is bravery isn't a feeling that we arrive at by happenstance. It's not. You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm brave, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to tackle the things that I'm struggling with in my life. It's a choice that we make amid uncertainty and adversity. Bravery is a choice that we've got to make even if we have no guaranteed reward of the thing that is in front of us. And resiliency is a byproduct of bravery. We've got to be brave in order to begin to step into resiliency. And it's cultivated by remembering that every single day is a battle, but victory is inevitable. I promise, because Jesus promised it to us. So 2 big ideas that I want us to kind of take hold of. And this, I believe, is going to take us a mile deep very, very quickly. The first is that God delights in caring for you. Now, that could be an easy thing that you read or you take a picture of and you go, okay, that's cool. Where does that apply? Okay, I don't know exactly how that helps me currently in my everyday struggle. Well, it begins for you to begin to take hold, not just to know, but to take hold of your value, your intrinsic value that is ascribed to you by God, and that God wants you to be very, very confident in. Matthew chapter 8, there's an incredible story of Jesus healing someone with leprosy. If you have your Bible, I would encourage you to go here. I want you to highlight something very, very specific. And I want us as a church, as Overflow, as a family, to really begin to press in to how we read the Bible and the context clues and the depth that we pursue. I believe is so critically important. Matthew chapter 8, verse 1, it says this, when Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him because news had been getting out as to what Jesus was capable of. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. And the word here, willing, is so important because Jesus says it back to the man here in just a second. And when you begin to dig into the depth of this, you begin to see something really, really important. The text goes on to verse number 3. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. And he says, I'm willing. He said, be clean. The reason that this is important is because when you look back into the Greek of the word willing, you actually find that a better translation for that, the kind of underneath the surface meaning to willing is wish or desire. So let's read it that way just for a second. I desire to help you. It would be my greatest wish to heal you. I want with everything in me to help you. But for us, like if we're being really honest, when it comes to our walk with God, we don't feel like God delights in caring for us, which is why I believe Matthew was so intentional about the wording and the way that he recorded this story and this interaction of Jesus, because he's trying to show us that at God's core, at the core of who Jesus is and was, he desires to care for you. He desires to care for you and to restore you to wholeness. And when you look into the back end of that story, yes, Jesus heals the man, and the text says he immediately healed him. And I want to be really, really careful by the way that we talk about that, because a lot of us could begin to build our faith on the notion that the minute that we ask God to heal us, we're immediately going to feel better. And that is simply not the case in our everyday life. And I'm not going to pretend that is the reality and build a faux faith for you. I don't want that for you. But I do want us to latch on to this idea that at the core of who Jesus is, he desires to care for you and to help restore you to wholeness. But here's the thing, the second big idea of the night is that wholeness is worth the work. Wholeness takes work. And wholeness or fullness or completeness in our life probably definitely looks a lot different today than it will in eternity. And wholeness is a little bit of a difficult thing to encapsulate, especially when it comes to our mental well-being, the way that we view ourselves, the way that we view the world around us. And I have a working definition of it for us to begin to paint the picture of what I'm trying to talk about tonight. And it's this, is wholeness is when all parts of your soul, your will, your mind, and your body function in unity and harmony, and where authority is rightly given. Read that one more time. Wholeness is when all parts of your soul, your will, your mind, and your body, they function in unity and harmony, where authority is rightly given. Notice what's not in there. Perfection is not on the other side of what wholeness is. We can be whole and still be imperfect in our life on earth. Is it the finished version of what we will experience one day in closer proximity to Jesus in eternity? No. But we do have a version of wholeness that I believe Jesus wants for us in the in-between. And we begin to see how complicated this is by something that Paul says to the church in Rome in Romans chapter 5. Sorry to make you flip around a lot tonight. Romans chapter 5, verse 2. Paul says, he's talking about the hope of Jesus and the provision of Jesus and the radical events of Jesus' life. And he says, we boast in the hope of the glory of God, which is a very, very big statement. It's like, that is where our hope lies. But he's honest, and he says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that suffering produces perseverance, and perseverance, character, and character, hope. But here's the thing. I just want to take out suffering and perseverance. I don't really want to deal with those things. I'm going to be really honest with you. I have told my counselor that time and time and time and time again. I'm like, Chris, bro, I'm done. Like, I'm done feeling this way. I'm done thinking this thought pattern. I'm sick and tired of it. And he keeps pointing me back to this every time. And I'm like, Chris, I get it, but I'm kicking and screaming over here. I'm like Lennon at like 10 o'clock at night, not wanting to go to bed. I'm like, no, this is not it, God. Like, I don't want it. But the reality is what Paul is saying is so true. And it points us to this idea, is that hope isn't always easy. A friend of mine said the other day, they said, I'm just really, really struggling to find hope in my life right now. But we often think when we follow Jesus, or when we believe in God, or we attend church day in and day out and do all the things or check all the proverbial boxes, that hope should just be automatic. But the thing that can help us sit a little bit easy is that hope isn't always easy. And Paul gives us the window. Yes, we glory in our sufferings because it leads to perseverance, and perseverance to character, and character to hope. Hope is a journey because it's a journey to a person. It's a journey in a relationship. It's not a light switch that gets turned on or turned off. But what combats hope? What combats hope in your life and in mine? If I had to imagine, it's simply the way that we think. Because our thoughts are incredibly challenging. And the way that we think is honestly, it's like our personal picture of our reality. And I think about the way that I think a lot more today than I ever have in my life. It's a bit of a weird thing to think about. And it's like, how many times can you say the word think in a statement on a conversation about mental health? But the way that you think about yourself, the easiest things that you believe about yourself are very, very telling about where your hope lies and where your value is secured. Dr. Caroline Leaf, I'm going to read you the way that she describes herself in the back of her book and her website. She's written several books and about the brain. She studied the brain for 38 years. That is crazy to me. This is what her website and the back of her book in combination says. Dr. Caroline Leaf is a communication pathologist and a cognitive neuroscience with a master's and PhD in communication pathology and a BS in logopedics, specializing in cognitive and metacognitive neuropsychology since the early 1980s. She has researched the mind-brain connection, the nature of mental health, and the formation of memory. She was one of the first in her field to study how the brain can change neuroplasticity with direct mind input. I don't know what half that means. I literally had to look it up. She is incredibly intelligent, and in her book, Switch On Your Brain, it feels like she quotes every part of the Bible in the way that she talks about the way that we think and God's intelligent design in the way that we process information, the way that we think, the way that we see our value, and the way that we see our hope for the future. She says this in her book. She says, science is finally catching up to the Bible. I think that is the best statement of the night. Science is finally catching up with the Bible because she draws the observation in the 80s, in the 1980s, up until that point, people didn't believe that the brain could change. They didn't believe in the concept of neural pathways, which would suggest the more you think a thought, the easier it is to think said thought. But her research would suggest a lot of things that are really, really interesting. She actually scientifically proved on a brain map, this is super interesting, and I'll be quiet about her research, that if you pray for 12 minutes a day, she can show you the difference in your brain and the way that your brain responds. And to be fair, she's not saying that specifically about people who necessarily prayed, but she's talking about the research data of practicing quiet, practicing stillness, practicing honesty in where you are. So it's very, very interesting to see the way that she talks about thinking. And one of the direct places that she is talking about in the way that science is finally catching up to the Bible is something else that Paul said in his letter to the church in Corinth. 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 3, flip forward a few pages and you'll be right there. He says this, for though we live in the world, we do not wage war as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. And on the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. And then here comes the really, really famous part. He says, we demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. Now, this is a verse that may have been quoted at you and not given to you to say, just take every thought captive. And no strategy was given to you, no means to understand the way that you think about your value, the way that you think about your identity was given to you. And a great friend of mine who actually teaches counseling for a living, who has been ridiculously helpful as I've researched this series, gave me a really, really helpful tool. And I think that it would be really helpful to you. And I'm super dramatic. Actually, Zach Hamby's in the room tonight. We've had a war on Instagram about who is the most drama. I'm gonna let y'all decide. He made a reel of how dramatic I was, and he said he spent like an hour and change on the reel. I didn't make said reel, so whoever is the most dramatic, y'all decide. But y'all can bring the board out. I've always wanted to be more like Mike on Sunday, but I can't draw, so I had Mike draw this diagram for me. But I felt like it was too drama to have it all out here the whole time, so I said, well, can we just bring it out during the message? This is John and Taylor, everybody. Welcome. And I know I know this is a lot, and it is drama, but it's just the way I am. I just want to point out, Mike signed the drawing, and I didn't tell him this, but I was going to try to make the argument that he wanted the credit for it. But Mike's way better at drawing than I am, and he's been getting really, really good at these stick figures with hearts. He said a couple Sundays ago that he's on a mission to get rid of all stick figures. This is what I would call the river of thought. So if you're taking notes and you want to put something at the top of your journal as far as what this would be described as, it's called the river of thought. I would challenge you to adopt this in your everyday life. No matter whether or not you're struggling or whether or not you're confident, I think this is worth doing for the way that you process your identity, your value, and the thoughts that run through your mind every day. Fun fact, you can't go 3 seconds without thinking a thought. You can go multiple days without eating food. You can go multiple days without drinking water. You can't go 3 seconds without thinking a thought. So, the idea is that our thoughts come at us like they're in a river. The way that we're experiencing our life, the way that we go about our everyday life, the way that we attend class, the way that we talk to our parents, we are constantly inundated with thought after thought after thought. And it's as if we're standing on a riverbank dealing with different thoughts that just kind of come up to us. And we are left to sort them and to process them and decide which thought gets authority, which thought gets to be true, which is connecting all the way back to the first question that I asked you, and that what is the easiest thing about yourself that you believe? So the way that I would kind of boil it down, and yes, some of you are thinking, Carson, there are way more sources for my thoughts than the 4 things that you have up here. Just for the sake of this conversation, I'm gonna lump everything into 4 big buckets: your brain, your mind, God, and evil. Now, there are conversations about trauma. There are conversations about struggles that you experience in your life, and you're going, where does that fit? It might kind of fit in a couple of different buckets. But here's what's critically important for us all to understand. In our everyday life, we are experiencing thoughts from all 4 of these places, probably simultaneously. And we are left standing on the bank of our life going, what's actually true? It's proven scientifically that trauma actually runs in your nervous system. So therefore, I would say that that's a big thing that probably resides in your brain. Dr. Caroline Leaf would define the mind as the things that we feel, the things that we are truly experiencing, and the things that we choose, and the way that we think. So your mind, and she draws this really, really brilliant explanation of this, which I'm not gonna try to reproduce because I have not studied the brain for 38 years. But her point is that the brain is actually a part of the mind. The mind is not a part of the brain. Your mind would be accurately described as your soul. And your soul is your entire being. And the thing that we've got to begin to understand is that God wants oneness with our mind. And therefore, beginning to create clarity and truth about what is evil and what is naturally coming across the forefront of our brain. But all meanwhile, we're processing, okay, is this coming from my brain? Is this kind of stuck in my nervous system? Is this in my mind? Is this from God? Is this from evil? The way that I would just kind of give you this for free, John chapter 8, Jesus describes the enemy, the devil, as the father of all lies. And he describes when he speaks, he is speaking his native language by lying. You think about the implications of that. The lies that you face in your life are probably coming from some source of evil in the world where the native language is lying, which means that it would be so easy for us to believe it because it sounds true. So the thing that I would challenge you to do in the context of the way that you think and the way that you're living your life right now is begin to label the big thoughts of your life. Where is that coming from? Is that something that has been born in unity with God and who you want to become and in an alignment with your intrinsic value and the fact that God delights in caring for you? Or is that something that's been stuck in your brain since you were a kid or because of something that was done to you? The difference is incredibly important because it begins to give you a handle as to what you're experiencing in your everyday life. But there's another part to this, and it's what we are fixated on. And we've all got different things that fit in this box. But as we're standing across from the river and we're looking across and we're dealing with our brain, we're dealing with the things that we believe God is saying to be true about our mind, and we are fighting the lies of the enemy and evil in the world, we oftentimes have a fixation. And this could change from day to day, but this could be a job that you want, a girlfriend or a boyfriend that you would like to have, a relationship with your parents that you've never had before. Maybe it's just a feeling that you've never been able to feel healthy or feel confident or feel hopeful. And here's the thing that we've got to understand is oftentimes our value is determined by what we are most fixated on. And that is why Paul is, I believe, pleading with the people that he's writing to understand that we've got to take everything that greets us at the door of our life and make it obedient to Christ. Because your life is too important for you to be fixated on the wrong thing. Your life is too important to receive evil, to receive old patterns and old ways of thought as your forever reality, because God wants to restore your mind. He wants to care for you. And we experience God's care as we take one step at a time in following Him. Your source of value determines how you fight. Where you get your value from determines how far you can run, how hard you can fight. And your value that is secure in the person and the resurrection of Jesus will never fail you, which is why we have been saying hope has a name. To just sum all this up, the thing I would love to just give you, for you to think about, for you to consider, for you to apply to your life is this. Because hope has a name, we can't be too far gone. You cannot be too far gone. And your value, our value is secure. So our future is bright. Despite what you feel right now, your future is bright because your value is secure. But we must take hold of what is true and join the fight for our soul as a victor by surrendering our life to the enduring love of Jesus as a victor, because Jesus has declared victory on your behalf. Therefore, you are free to surrender your life to the feet of Jesus. The end of the story of King Jehoshaphat goes like this. 2 Chronicles chapter 20, verse 14. Then the Spirit of the Lord came on Jeziel, son of Zechariah, and he stood in the assembly where Jehoshaphat is declaring all these things about God and pulling people together. He said, "Listen, King Jehoshaphat, and all who live in Judah and Jerusalem, this is what the Lord says to you. Do not be afraid or discouraged because of this vast army, for the battle is not yours, but God's." Don't be afraid, because you are so valuable to God that He is going to come through for you. But it's not an empty promise. There's not just empty sets of instructions. There's hope in our struggle, in our pain, in the uncertainty and in the adversity that we experience. There's clarity about how do we begin to discern what is actually true about us. And I think that as we continue to talk about these things at Overflow and as a church, it doesn't necessarily get easier. And you're leaving tonight with some of the same things that you walked through that door with. And we want to help, and we want to connect you to resources. And our church I'm biased, but I would say we're very good at connecting people because we believe in it so deeply. But the truth in the matter is that yes, some of the struggles that you're experiencing, some of the trauma that you carry with you, they're not necessarily your fault. But your life is yours to steward. Your life is your responsibility to surrender back to the Lord and say, Lord, this battle is yours. And despite what it looks like right now, I'm trusting you. I don't know what to do, and I don't know where the victory is coming from, but my eyes are set on you because you are the one who ascribes intrinsic value to me. And therefore, I'm not going with the easiest thing to believe about me anymore. I'm believing in the thing that's actually harder to believe, and that is that I am unconditionally loved by the God of all creation, by the God who gave absolutely everything to have you and me. I'm gonna allow that to transform the way that I think. I'm gonna allow that to be the resource in the way that I move forward. I'm gonna allow that to become my hope. So when I experience hardship, when I experience difficulty, I can rest assured that despite all of those things, hope still has a name, and it's God's wish. It's God's desire to care for you and me every step of the way. I'd love to invite you to just bow your head where you are, and I promise I'm not going to ask you to do anything weird or to make you feel uncomfortable. But if you're sitting here tonight and you're thinking, I want to surrender my life to Jesus, I just don't know where to start. Or if you're sitting here going, I need a change in the source of my value. I need a change in the way that I see my mental health. Something has got to give because I am absolutely burnt out. I'm exhausted and I need help. I'm not gonna ask you to raise your hand. I'm not gonna ask you to come down front. And with everybody keeping their head bowed and their eyes closed, would you just look up here at me for just a second? If you feel like you're at the end of the road, you need help, something's got to change for you. I want you to see my eyes when I tell you this. You are not alone. But proximity cannot be confused as connection. You've got to make yourself known. I need you to be brave and ask for help. I need you to trust me when I say that God delights in any opportunity to care for you. And I want you to know that I'm praying for you. I'm rooting for you. I'm your biggest fan. I believe that hope does lie ahead. And if you're in the room and you feel really confident right now, going day by day, experience by experience, and you're feeling really, really good, I just would beg you to consider, for the sake of the rest of your life, for the sake of the ground that you are building your faith and your life upon, where's your value coming from? Build it on solid ground. The only solid ground that's strong enough to support you and the life that you're living is Jesus. So over the next few moments, we're gonna sing a declaration that even if we're surrounded, even if we're in the middle of difficulty, we're gonna praise God anyway, because He is hope. and he is love. He's inherently kind, and he delights in knowing your name. And if you want to come down front in just a moment to pray, to get some space, to be with just you and God, I welcome you to do that. But don't miss any opportunity to declare your trust and your love for God, because these moments are healing and they are helpful. God, thank you again for tonight. God, thank you for being hope. Thank you for being good. God, we're just honored to sit in your presence. God, I pray for a new level of faith to rise in this room over the next few moments. And not a faux version of faith that when they walk out the door tonight, everything's just going to be gone, but that you are going with them and that you are for them. And there is not going to be a day in their life that you forsake them. God, I pray that you would put that in all of our hearts and on the forefront of all of our minds, and that we would be incredibly confident people in who you say that we are. God, I pray that we would surrender our value to you. We would surrender the battle to you, but we would take hold of what is true and believe the things that you say about who we are and what our future looks like. God, we love you. We say this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Let's stand together and sing this together.